Good morning, everyone. Oops, we got a little bit of feedback somewhere. I'm not sure where that's coming from. This is Catherine Clement in Shawnee, Oklahoma, and this is the Saturday Morning Mastermind. We are the Mindset Mastery Collective, and I'm here with my friends Dan, Jason, Karen, and Sandy. And so happy that we could get together. We get together almost every Saturday morning. Sometimes we miss because life happens, but I'm going to let everybody jump out and introduce themselves, and then we're going to continue our discussion. We're currently about halfway through chapter 2 of Your Soul's Plan by Rober Schwartz. If anybody has the physical book, can hold it up, that would be great, because I just have to, there we go. It's a great book. I need to just buy the physical copy, because whenever I'm listening to the Audible, I'm like, oh gosh, I want to highlight that. I haven't figured out how to highlight on Audible. I know there's a way to do it, but I haven't figured it out. So I'll mute out, let everybody come out and introduce themselves.
Oh, I'm already out, so I'll go out. Hi, good morning. I'm Sandy Root. Excuse me. Just waking up, so bear with me. Excited to get into the discussion here in Miami Beach. Sunny, bright day.
Dan Sisek in Las Vegas, Nevada, and looking forward to jumping in and diving in some more in this second chapter. There's probably tons of things we can go on. I'm sure we could go on forever on this book. So just ready and looking forward to the discussion. Come on.
I'm Karen Lohoff in Mesa, Arizona, and plenty of warmth here in case your bones are cold.
Okay, there we go. Jason Roberts here. Great to be here this weekend with you all. And looking forward to the discussion. Let's do it.
All right, awesome. It's so glad to have everybody here. And if you're watching this video after the fact, please, if you want to be on here with us, you're welcome to be on here with us live every week. Or just, we appreciate you watching the videos too. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel. We have a Facebook page, Mindset Mastery Collective. If you'd like to become part of that Facebook group, we'd love to have you. So we talk about, how long have we been doing this, you guys? 5 or 6 years, something like that. I can't even remember. We started out really more focused towards business mindset, but it's kind of morphed through the years. Our books, now we're, looking at different spiritual topics, and some of our books have been slightly provocative, I guess, to some people. I don't know, but they're challenging. They're books that make you question things, and that's what we like about them. So this book, Your Soul's Plan, Mr. Schwartz has written more than one book, but this one and the next one, which I can't remember which one that one is, The Soul's Gift, I think it's called. They're the primary concept of it is that we are eternal souls that kind of go in and out of physical bodies, many times, and they may be human or they may not be human bodies, but we come in different experiences. But the concept is that as souls, eternal souls, we get together before we come into an incarnation, and we basically plan lives with certain challenges, or maybe no challenges, in order to grow and experience things. In this time, we're all humans. So and another time we may have been something else, but there's soul groups and soul families, and I'm sure that everybody has experienced the feeling of meeting someone and immediately feeling like you've known them forever. I know that's happened to me. Now there's other people I meet and I don't feel connection to them whatsoever, so maybe they're in another group, I don't know. But sometimes you can meet what we call kindred spirits, I guess, where it's kind of like a mind meld, that Vulcan mind meld thing going on. Now, Karen, when we were talking a little bit before we started recording, Karen wanted to go back and revisit something in the last chapter. So I think we should start there before we move into today's stuff. Karen, do you want to go ahead and bring that out for us?
What I have is a Kindle copy, and I have been waiting for my hard copy for the last 2 Saturdays. I feel like there's so many things I want to make note of, but in my Kindle copy, this is actually the same chapter. It begins with someone with AIDS, and then it goes on to other people or another person. But I happen to be reading, maybe it's a little hard to keep track of, I guess, when you're spinning Kindle. But I read 2 or 3 pages, and the author has chosen, I think, 10 individuals throughout the book that he takes to mediums or psychics or individuals that he's found to be solid professional people with a good reputation that he believes in, that he wants these 10 individuals who have AIDS or handicapped kids or who are handicapped themselves or who are alcoholic, or I have not read through the whole book. I'll be interested to see if he takes someone who spends their whole life, as I have, waiting for a relationship that I could relate to, that might be a soul group relationship, as opposed to, well, that's not what I planned. But anyway, this person that he took, this man that has AIDS to, actually went into a channeling of 3 participants. 2 of them had been angels who just were in the angelic realm, who had never incarnated. 1 had incarnated 867 times, which kind of blew me over because I was thinking I'm not handling 1 time all that well. Of course, that's a judgment on myself. And the person who had incarnated talked about how he and this person with AIDS were especially soulmates because of having both color and sound of a similar vibration, which I thought was really neat, because I do think sometimes you can sense that you've got a sound vibration similar with persons. I think especially, when I watch TV or a movie, I just resonate so well with certain sounds that people, their voices. And colors, I don't see auras, so I guess I don't really know if I relate in that way. And then he remarks, or the channeled entities remark, it's the true healer, the true sage who remains sage with those who are not awake. Take heart and remain at courage. And I think of Catherine because we learn so much from Catherine about all these things, and it makes me feel like I haven't been very awake in comparison to the things that she teaches us about. And I know the pain, I know she's remarked at the pain sometimes it is to be an awake person in a world of people that are not very awake. And this was behind what they were trying to tell this man as to why, yes, the answer to why he had chosen AIDS in the pre-existence was that somebody had to back out of a genetic predisposition where in a former life someone had, with fear-based intentions, totally lost track of their soul, that they were souls, that person had a soul. And I thought, wow. And so he took on the burden of coming into being a light who could shine through shame. If we recall last week, we did talk about the shame that was, available to him as a homosexual and as a person who had AIDS. But anyway, the soul group, what they were doing in this trio that had the two angels and the one that had gone through so many lives with John before, they were to bring about the obstacles that John would need to go through so that he could become the shining light for the soul group that had come through this experience where they'd lost a sense of their souls. And I just think that is so fascinating. I mean, I think about people I've talked to in life who have, I just think about a person who lived behind the alley behind me when I was in high school. And a friend and I went over to see her one time. She was a real popular girl, but she was also pretty wild, and she carried a flask of whiskey in her shorts. And we said to her, do you know about Jesus Christ? And she said, who? I thought, this is really fascinating to me. It just proved to me as a high schooler that there were people at different soul levels. And so I was anxious to talk about this a little bit. I hope that it's something that it interests some of the rest of you.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's amazing. I mean, just think about how many personalities we might have each had. So the soul is eternal, personalities are eternal, and many of them concurrent from what we're beginning to understand, not necessarily past or future, but more like happening right now at the same time. And how do we decide? Are we as fully present somewhere else as we are right here, right now? I mean, that's it. It's very curious to my mind, and it makes me wonder because you know how sometimes, and Dan, I think I've heard you mention this. You walk into another room. Somebody's on here's mentioned it. Maybe you walk into another room, and it's suddenly like you're just in a completely different place, and that has certainly, happens to me a lot, or you just completely, it puts a whole new spin on when we think of our lack of memory about things, because how could we remember everything and not confuse? Like sometimes I remember talking to a friend one time, and she was telling me about an experience that I had told her, and I have no memory of that experience anymore for some reason. I don't know why. So it makes me wonder, is that something that happened in this life, in another life, on another dimension? This guy has had over 800 and some lives, and I'm sure many people have had, just untold numbers. So how do we keep all that straight?
Yeah, well, yeah, when you mentioned being present somewhere else at this same time, it reminded me, I was listening to a class from Dr. Joe Dispenza about, sometimes he goes into that quantum field, and he was in it one day, and he saw one of his past lives where he was in Hyde Park as a mixed man, and he would, tote the people around in the carriages, and he said it just was so vivid and so real. And then he moved on to another time. I mean, on this present time where he was living a parallel life, and I totally believe that that's possible, that we could be living another life at this same time. It's mind-boggling, but there's some sense that I have that is totally possible. And yeah, this chapter was interesting because it made me think too of, like, people in my life, like my family, and the close friends that you just have that connection with right away, that you just meet and you're like, I know you from somewhere, I don't know where, the past life, something. But talking about these meetings that our souls have to make this plan before we come, and I've been thinking about that a lot with my family. Like, we must have had some conversations before this about, I'm going to take this role and you take that role so we can work through this. And just with friends, certain friends pop into my head, or relationships I've had where I'm like, oh, I feel like there must have been some soul communication before we came here, and that's why this happened this way, or I got hurt in this way, or, perceived hurt because I needed to go through this process, and they were actually here to help me, and we had this agreement for me to go through this. So it just really brings a whole new level to why certain things happen with certain people or relationships. So yeah, you could just go on and on and on with the past lives with other people, the soul agreements you've made before you come here, and it's just like, wow, it opens up a whole world of imagination.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting on that end because as you guys are talking about this, I'm kind of even looking right now as me and my family, but I'm looking at it from a different aspects of some of the differences of who I am and what I'm like compared to some of my members of my family. Whereas you can see the familiar, you know, uh, resemblances in the family of, certain genetics and stuff. But I'm more of the very loving, open, caring, very, very um, kind of like my sister-in-law is. My brother's a little more reserved, but he can be. But there are certain attributes that they have that I don't have. Whereas I'm definitely a morning, day person, one of those type of people. I'm very outside myself. Um, I I've had those times where I've met people and it's like, oh wow, you seem very familiar, very comfortable, and I feel very at ease with them. And others, I have that energy and just kind of rubs me the wrong way, and I've noticed that too. But going back to my family, like I said, I'm more of a day person. I like certain type of foods, whereas they all like other things, and it's a very different contrast. And they're more night people, and very, I kind of look at that and go, I know they're my family and stuff, but is this distinction something that is part of, the characteristics of what, and I'm throwing it out this way, is to even, because I'm going back to, like, for me and my beliefs in the Bible, where God says He knew me before I was formed in the womb, but so somehow I existed in a sense in God's mind, the universe's mind, whatever. I was there and thought of, and so somehow maybe in that's the existence I'm looking at, and how and maybe in that came here with some of the things that I have now and what I'm about and how I'm going through the things in my life that, because like I said, when I look back on some of the things I went through as a childhood, they definitely have geared me towards what I'm, dealing with some people in my life now, so that way I could be the one that could handle it, still be there in love and care, and not be the one to be that person. That
He keeps losing his connection or something. Sorry, guys. That's interesting, though, what he was talking about. I would venture to say we're probably not born into a physical family that's in a different soul group, although it could certainly be set up where, because I think most of us, especially people who are open, get, they feel so different from their family. And, but I think that's probably pre-set up. Go ahead, Dan.
Sorry, I'm having issues with my connection today. I had to do a full system rescan and stuff on my computer when I came back from dog and house sitting, so my computer's acting up. But to finish what I was saying is, it makes me look at my life in a little different perspective now on things, and how some of the things you guys have brought up, and is opening me to look at things from a different lens, so to speak, and just open even to a little bit of the possibilities of some of those things being there, and as to why I am the way I am now, and why because I think I take a lot of things very personally. And so even though somebody may not do it with that intention, the way I feel it and the way it feels, and the way the energy comes across to me, is I feel it very personally, and then my mind takes it and goes way to another. So I think that's some of what going through this book is helping me look at things and understand that, well, there might be things that's, I'll put it this way, residual or effects of stuff from whatever. Like I said, I'm still wrapping my head around some of this and trying to assimilate it and put it into stuff I can work with and deal with too.
Jason, I don't know if you're having trouble again with your mute button or whatever, but I hope you'll come out and share some things. Talking about this, taking things personally, it's so interesting to live with a group of older people who probably have not been very open in their lifetimes. And I told one man, that he tends to get butthurt. I knew that, that's a younger generation than I'm at. But my son really taught me that I was going through my life butthurt. And I can think of that clear back to, at least fourth grade, that I easily took on things way far more personally than they were intended. And, if you've spent any time around an older person, especially someone who's dealing with Alzheimer's, or I can't think of the easier word. I don't know why that never comes to me, but you can really feel how, it's almost like they, take on a body stance that you can tell that they're getting really offended personally. Thank you, dementia. Yeah, that's it. And I think, here I am in a mode where I've been kind of in my life where I like to do what I do on these, these sessions where I kind of share my most valued ideas, and you know, they're just not remembered, or they're not, you know, they're not listened to, or they're, you know, they really don't have anything to do with anybody. And so the next time that kind of personalization is taken on, we're back to square one. And I have to think about myself too. You know, how well have I learned some of these layers of lessons of being me that are probably not really being me. They're not being my soul me. They're being my my human me.
You bring up a great point, Karen. What if all these people that have, quote, Alzheimer's, dementia, and all these other memory conditions that maybe they're just focused on another parallel universe life instead of on this one? You know, it's a possibility. That's the thing. We don't know how this works, guys. We're trying to figure this out. And I just want to preface this. I almost feel like we need to start every session with the information that although this book is based on information gathered through mediums and channels, if you are someone who does not believe in mediums and channels, and there's many, many people out there, I highly recommend that you go to a website called soulproof.com, because they are actually developing electronic devices that are communicating with what we would consider entities or non, what do they call them? They have a special word for them, pre-material or something like that. You know, it's scientifically proven now. So if you're somebody that doesn't believe in that, you need to go check out the science on that, because mediums and channels, yes, you know, throughout the years, there's been shysters, obviously. There is in every profession in the world, you know, but there's also a lot of real people that can communicate that have been called shysters who really aren't, and now they're proving that through science. So go check that out. But we don't, you know, you bring up a great point, Karen. Maybe these people, and again, what their physical body takes in, you know, they could be in there, their soul could be in there listening to you and going, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But their outside body just can't connect in that way.
I'll jump out real quick. I think what you're speaking of with the voice. I think it's called disembodied voice. I find that the subject interesting, and I tend to watch those haunted shows or the unexplained and all that. But I feel like I'm getting a lot of, I don't know, not negativity, but just kind of sort of resistance and in this subject. Not just because there's a lot of different questions that don't necessarily make sense to me. Just a lot of other things that people also claim have to do with the spiritual side of our existence, and you know, where we get our traits and our and everything, and it doesn't seem like it meshes. And then there's another side of me that or another mode of thought, I guess, that, you know, tells me that, well, that maybe things aren't meant to bleed over that much. And if we're constantly looking back and looking for the whys and wherefores, then we're not focused on what we're doing here this existence, maybe. But then again, that's a total up in the air question as well. So, it's not that I don't have any negativity towards it, but I definitely have a little bit of, I guess my mind just has a little resistance to it, because none of it really makes sense or has any feel. I don't feel like it has any real meaning at this point to me, though I understand what you're saying, especially like with the gadgets that they're creating to allow spirits to harness the energy and then like pick words out of the radio waves and use them, and I guess all that could be manipulated, but also it could be real. I mean, you get some pretty uncanny descriptions of what's going on in that kind of metaphysical world that then kind of pans out with the history behind whatever that person or place is, it seems like. Though it just, I mean, the idea of being able to, exist in two places at one time, to be living a simultaneous life, to be doing all that. I mean, I don't know. It's just hard for me to wrap my head around it, I guess. And so I'm listening intently with hopes of discovering more about myself and about what you all are talking about. So, but what I am getting from what you are discussing and what I've read in the book is that there are a lot of there's just different perspectives. Everyone has such different perspectives, and what you think is common knowledge may not even be a thought in another individual's head or in their past even. And so I think a lot of times we enter into a conversation with someone or a connection with someone, and we may automatically be off on a wrong understanding, because maybe our understanding is less or more than theirs on that particular subject. And so that's very interesting to me. And then also that, how when we grow up and how things are affecting us, or how our life in this reality is affecting us, and we're growing up and we're being told certain things by authority figures in our life, and how we react to those authority figures. Now, is that part of the plan, or is that not part of? Was that not part of the plan? Was part of the plan just that we were going to be put into this family, and we were going to play this role in this family, or and then it just doesn't make. I would think in a spiritual realm that the spirits would be. I mean, I try to plan my day, my week, my year, but I know things are going to get in the way. I know the plan isn't going to work out the way I expect it to. But you work through it and you try to make it happen. Sometimes you have to let go of your original target and focus on another target when when your first original focus is not there anymore, can't be there. So I just think that there's something about trying to plan a life beforehand that maybe also causes that resistance. So not that I'm not open to it. I just feel resistance. So I'll hop off and let you guys talk. Sorry.
I'm with you, Jason. I certainly recall, it's interesting having experienced what many people call a faith crisis, where I no longer believe that everything that I was taught religion-wise. And I went to a university for 5 years and took extra religion courses there, as well as my growing up and my marriage experience, and having children in that situation and so forth, having having a realization of a change of heart as to what of that is true and what of that is not true. I was taught, all religions have a certain amount of truth, but we have the whole truth. It's all, it's the only true church. And, that was really, truly pounded into my head, literally, since I was a child. And kind of unsorting all of that has been a lot like a ball of yarn. And I can literally think back through periods of my life. As you were talking, I was thinking about, was this authority figure who was a 5th grade teacher and the wife of the principal, who I never, ever, ever, ever saw smile, who chased me out of the building after I'd had lunch, and I was just looking at my little sister's brand new glasses. And I just really, I fell apart. I was with my best friend, and we went out on the playground, and I'm crying my eyes out, and I'm coming up 2 flights of stairs, seeing my kind 4th grade teacher. And, I thought of all of that while you were talking, and I think, how many of these experiences do we have in our lives where they do kind of stand out like a sore thumb, and we think, maybe this is where this fits. Like I mentioned earlier, I don't know if it was before we got together or if it was once I kind of started things out. My friend who had just been exposed to the idea of reincarnation being true by a son who was so educated, who'd had experience with kind of getting into those records that you can get. And she really had to think about reincarnation. And she said to me, I don't want to have to come back. I do not want to have to come back. And, that was like a sore thumb that made me kind of not stop thinking about reincarnation, because she believed the way I did. And here you are with this little sore thumb sticking up, and, you're having to think.
Over on soulproof.com, there's actually a sort of a frequently asked question section, and the answers there have come about through different communications that they've had with these out-of-body people. And that's one of the questions is, what if I don't want to come back? So I encourage everybody to go over there and check out that section. And we have to keep in mind that, from our very, very skewed human experience, where we're looking through this little tiny shard of, what we can understand with these minds, nobody would really want to come back. It's like, what? I didn't even think I was going to make it to age 20, much less the age I am now. And, it's just been a hell of a ride the whole way along. But that's why I think that actually is what helps me believe that this eternal experience is true, because there's I believe in a loving God. And so a loving God would not just put a bunch of people on a place and make them suffer for 100 years or 60 or 3 or whatever they live, right? Um, a loving God would not um, put even one person through the suffering that we see some people go through, entire cultures going through that experience or different things. So, because the one, I don't understand anything or how anything works, but because I believe in a loving God, that's what makes me believe in reincarnation and this soul planning and things, because that's the only thing that makes sense through a loving God. Um, I certainly, even as a human, with all of my biases and opinions and ego and all this stuff get in the way, even I could not condemn one of my children to an eternal hellfire for the rest of their eternal existence. I mean, it's almost laughable to me, and I'm sorry if that. I'm not trying to offend anyone, because I know many people are very. That's their belief system, and that's, it. I personally couldn't live with that. Like, I have to believe shit that gets me through this life, basically. And and that belief does not get me through this life at all. That belief gets me into uh, a little pile on the end of my bed, covered over with blankets and pillows.
Mentioning coming back into this human life, I thought this morning, probably for the first time with any seriousness, if you were to choose, and I do think this is all about choice. I think as we read this, we get that you get in these soul groups, and you either get chosen to be the light that shines, or you say yes, or I mean, we've already experienced where people can say yes or can say no to something. But I have a puppy site that I've finally put about 200 puppies on, and they're not, I'm not the skilled photographer. I'm the grunt worker, and it is so delightful. They're primarily 8 weeks old. They might be 8 to 12 weeks old, and the interesting thing about puppies is that they can look like grown dogs striding across the grass, and all this kind of stuff, but they play so much better. And so there's lots of things to compare sizes, like uh, a big dog with two tiny schnauzer puppies walking underneath, and that kind of thing. And I thought I could really enjoy that. Not the ASP whatever C commercial, where I hear that music and I just want to leave the room because I just can't bear what terrible things people do. But when it's just fun puppies, and I think about how many times in my dreams I have been on a hillside, and just with my feet just been able to kind of go forward like this, and I think I must have chosen to be a puppy many times.
I was going to jump out really quick on what you were talking about a little bit, Catherine, on our, minuscule shard of, understanding and stuff. And, um, you know, it's weird because I'm kind of like Karen with that one friend that in some cases doesn't want to come back because of some of the things I've gone through. But at the other time, there's even a greater hope that if that is what's true, I do come back, so that way I can use this and take it forward to share and grow and go from there for whatever. Um, but I agree. I think sometimes, you know, I don't have all the answers. I don't know it all, and but also going back to what you were saying about how even I don't have kids, but I have nieces, nephews, and I have my family, and but I know that if I had kids, no matter what they would do, I might be able to still have them walk through the consequences of what they go through. So, like, if they stole or killed or something like that, I would, you know, hope that I would be able to walk them through those consequences and let them pay, their debt or whatever they needed to pay or however it worked out. But I can never personally damn them to hell either. I don't think. But it's interesting to see how in the world we have seen that play out with families and stuff with their kids where they've done something or this and they have literally turned their back on them or been cast out, or especially in some Middle Eastern countries and stuff where if you don't toe that you know that familiar line or that caste system line or whatever, if you turn out to be gay and you tell that to your family and they will turn around and say you're not alive anymore and cast you out and literally put their own kid out and stuff. I don't think I could ever be that cruel and that inhuman. Um, I may not like it. I may not fully agree. I may not, but that would still be flesh, blood, family. People I care about. That's the side I'm kind of like with you at. It's like because I've lived through some of the things I've lived through, and experienced, you know, having a real mother I never really attached to because she never attached to me, you know, and stuff. And I'm kind of like Karen. I'm still looking to find that group of people and loving. I'm glad I have you guys as friends and a few other good friends that I do sense that with them. I do sense that, unconditional love in that sense. But even then, still, it's not still the same as in that, familiar realm. And so it's, you know, I don't know. You just touched me with that, what you were saying about, and I was thinking, I don't have kids of my own, but I already know what I would do and how I would feel. I would still do certain things, but it just, that really made me think about that aspect of it too.
Yeah, so John, earlier in the book, his soul chose to come in with or to contract AIDS as a way to learn and teach others. And in the second part of this chapter, it talks about someone called Doris, I believe was her name. And he had a channeler and a psychic, I think, both brought in information about her pre-planning sessions. And basically, she was it was talking about how when she's in a male body, she maybe abused some of the power that comes with being in a male body, especially on the sexual aspect. And then, so she came into a female body to learn the other side of that, basically, to teach her soul the other side of that. And then her mother, when she was in her teenage years, evidently, even though she was still a virgin, her and some friends bought a pack of condoms or something and were playing with them and put them in the drawer and didn't think anything about them. Well, the mom was an alcoholic and the mom was very intoxicated and found the condoms. And so when this girl came home one day, her mom basically shamed her and called her a whore and a slut and different. And that was the theme from then on. Her mom not recognizing that she, in fact, was still a virgin and that this was just a playful thing. Again, this is perspective. And what her mom saw was that, her young teenage daughter was a slut. And so the daughter, Doris, took that on and she immediately went out and lost her virginity in a very clinical way, they said. And then she basically just saw herself as someone only
good for sex. And I don't know, and with two male people on our panel here, I don't know if you guys, there's a lot of things that as women we don't understand about guys, and I don't know if you guys understand how prevalent, um, in my experience, in my own life, and then talking with other women, how prevalent this thought is is that we're only um, good to give it up. That everything is based around sex, and it that comes from many of us being abused as children at a very young age, sexually abused, and then into the teen years, or a little bit older years, being raped, and then going into relationships then that are based entirely or primarily on sex. Um, it it can cause a lot of issues, and you would think that it would cause women to shy away from sex, but it can actually go either way. It can turn into promiscuity, or it can turn into complete abstinence, or in some cases, it could even, I think, cause people to, uh, there's a lot of, like in my own case, I have to wonder if the, a lot of the pain that and even though I had like a physical condition that caused the pain, I think that the thoughts that I had throughout my life led to that injury happening to cause that pain, if that makes any sense. So, because don't you find it quite curious that somebody who was sexually abused and raped multiple times and this and that suddenly gets a condition where she can never have sex again? Like, I get it, right? It's like this big billboard. Hello. Um, so, Doris, part of the issue with her was this misuse of sex and judging herself, and a lot of self judgment. And sometimes, Dan, when I hear you speaking, I hear self judgment, or I feel self judgment, I should say. And especially um, when it concerns your mom and not feeling that connection with her, and what is wrong with me, why didn't we connect? And I can semi relate to that because my grandma primarily raised me. I never felt like my mom didn't want me, because I know my grandmother and I know how forceful she was, and if my grandmother decided that she was going to raise me, that's what was going to happen regardless of what my mother's wishes were. So I never felt unwanted, but I could have. That's the point I'm trying to get to. I could have felt unwanted. And I think that feeling of feeling unwanted is definitely one that needs to be addressed, because I think it can absolutely lead to physical conditions in the body.
Yeah, I never thought of that like that. And also, um, I myself, because I've never really had any, I've had girlfriends, I've had relationships. I I believe I've been in love a couple times, but um, never sustained, and it ended up not working out. But I wonder if part of that internal sense of, for lack of a better way of, but to go kind of like what you were saying, um, never feeling really wanted by my mom, because I've said it before. I don't really ever remember her saying "I love you," or if she did, it never came across, and I never received it or felt it in the way I need it to feel. And so I think, you know, and I can relate a story where we were all, my whole family, from what I understand, we were all camping, and it was up in Idaho, and I still remember this lake vaguely. For some odd reason, I remember this lake. I don't remember anything else really about anything else being there. but I remember that lake. Um, they said I fell off of a lawn chair, and they said I cracked my head, and I was bleeding, and my mom didn't even pick me up or try to console me or anything. It was my aunt, the mom I have down here, the one I call mom down here, was the one who picked me up and took me to the hospital and made sure that everything was okay. And when you hear a story like that, also, along with the fact that you don't really ever, and then you remember all the other things about your, mom and family and stuff, that as a kid, that puts a big toll on you, and it does affect you. It does affect me, and I think that's maybe why I crave and want somebody to love me, but I don't want it forced. I don't want it pushed. I don't want it, I just want it to be real, and I want to be able to feel it. And the only person I ever felt that love was in a genuine love was with my grandmother. And I do feel my love for my family down here and stuff, but it's still never been to that same depth. And I think that's why I overdo it sometimes when I do have people around in my life, and I tend to kind of overdo it sometimes. And I throw my heart wide open to caring and putting my time and energy into it. But then sometimes I think it pushes them away. So I'm wondering if this is part of what was in my however deemed how looking at God and knowing that I've always been in His mind in there, and even though I don't believe how I existed, I don't know how before, but here and coming through what I've gone through here and what I've learned, and I do believe I do have a real big heart and a real heart to love and have that genuine capacity. I just feel sometimes people don't understand it and don't take it the way I'm putting it out. And then I get, and then like I said, going back to where I take everything personally, and then I do that internal war with myself, trying to figure it all out. And I think there are a lot of people in the world that are out there just trying to figure things out too, and sometimes don't have the outlets or the ways or the means that we have here sometimes, where we can openly and genuinely, without the judgment or out, and with genuine love, because I believe we all love and care about each other too, to be able to express that. And this book is making me look at some of those things in a different way than I've ever thought of looking at it.
Well, I just have to say to you, Dan, that, and to anyone else struggling with this issue, that someone's ability to express love has nothing to do with your worthiness. Now, does anybody have any final thoughts for the day? Because we are at the top of the hour and we are going to wrap it up.
I'd like to hop out real quick and just thanks for inviting me on, everyone. And also, it's great that we have the Facebook group that we can hop on during the week and talk about what's coming up in the next chapter and what have you. And I'd like to invite anybody out there that's watching to look us up on Facebook. I think it's the Saturday Morning Mastermind, or Saturday Morning. I was going to make Saturday Morning Mastermind Collective. You might want to correct me on that, Catherine. But what I'm hearing also is, how what we're speaking of is relating to the cycles that I see about how these authority figures that we've had to grow up under and listen to and obey and whatnot. Well, they probably didn't have it figured out themselves, and probably were, probably had become part of their own cycle of emotions and whatnot. And then, if we allow ourselves to get affected by that, then, is that part of our plan, or are we supposed to avoid that? I think as everyone was talking, I remember growing up many times where I would just not allow myself to get tangled up in that, in other people's or even my own personal emotional knee-jerk reaction, or try to as much as possible. And I look back at some of the decisions I've made, and I'm really grateful that I did, because my life would be completely different if I had just acted out on pure emotion and just said things, just regurgitated things that I had heard other people say, instead of taking the time to really make a decision on my own and recognize what was going on, or at least recognize that, hey, I'm getting pulled in a direction that I necessarily not necessarily need to or want to, and trying to really just stop that cycle, or that, keep from perpetuating that, whatever that, usually it's a negative type of a thing that would enter my life. And I don't want to grab onto that and carry that around with me, or whatever it might be. But so many times I just look back on what you guys were saying, and it's like, that could have affected me a lot worse. Or if I hadn't reacted the way I did, I would have been perceived a totally different way, and then that would have led me down a different path. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, what I really appreciate being on this group, because even though I don't understand the topics and may even have some resistance or lack of energy towards it, it's still being part of a group like this is still helps me to look at where I am, where things have gone, and what what's going on with my life, and get different perspectives. So I really appreciate what you all are saying, and I do get that. I mean, there's that emotional. We all have these emotional needs, and how we deal with those. I'm kind of at a loss for words, but I don't know. I think understanding or listening to everyone, it's humbling to me, and I really appreciate you all. So thank you so much, and hope everyone has a terrific weekend.
Thank you, Jason, and we appreciate you being here. We appreciate everyone being here. Come on out, Sandy.
Oh, hello. What did I say? Yes. Well, yeah, I was going off thinking about what you were saying, Dan, about your mother, and I know I've had my own things with my parents and feeling unloved, like when my father left and the way he left when we were young. And yeah, it's been a process over the years, but when we really look at, like Catherine said, like it has nothing to do with our worth. But when we really look at it, it's taught me over time to really what self-love really is, and how to forgive as well, because our parents are behaving in the way that they're behaving because of whatever their life experience was, or to really look at, okay, they were behaving this way, it has nothing to do with me, and being able to forgive, which is a process, and it can be difficult, and it can go back and forth. Like some days I'm like, oh yeah, I forgave, and then something else will come up, and I'm like, okay, maybe I didn't fully forgive, and it's more of like, okay, gotta dig in a little deeper here. But I've gotten to the place where I really see that, okay, my parents did the best they could with where they were at, and it has nothing to do with my worth or how much I'm going to love myself and how much other people can love me. So I think, yeah, remembering that and going through the process of what is it here to teach you, and, you know, give your love, and don't be ashamed of that, giving that love that you wanted to other people. Because maybe that's part of the process, is that, yeah, well, I didn't get it, I'm going to give it to my peoples. So, yeah. Thank you, everyone. Great discussion. So much stuff. We could go on and on forever.
Yeah, we could definitely talk about this forever. Did you want to come out, Dan?
Oh, I was just throwing in, basically that I am learning that, what Sandy was saying, and I've learned that over all the last, my lifetime. I finally got to the point where I could forgive women, and that lifted a lot off of me. That really did take a lot. Not saying it still didn't have a moment in times where it affects me, but and I am learning to, realize, as you said, that, valuing myself and who I am and what I have to give is part of that whole process, and learning and growing and realizing that I I'm not necessarily them, and I won't be them, and that just because that happened doesn't mean I will become like them, and I don't think I am like them any way, shape, or form. In fact, I think I'm the total opposite, which has been I think probably a goal I set in my head when I was younger, that I so not wanted to be like that. And so I believe I'm well on that path, and have journeyed that path very well, on that sense, and I wouldn't change that either. I wouldn't change having gone through what I went through. Would I want to come back and go through it again? No. I want to go experience something else. So with that, so that was just what I was putting in the chat.
Awesome. All right, Sandy, thank you so much. Good luck on your next call. Love you. It's okay, everybody. Karen, did you have any last words? No? Okay. All right. So come find us on Facebook, Mindset Mastery Collective. Also over on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and come be with us. This is we're not here to judge anybody. As a matter of fact, that's what we're learning not to do, is to stop judging ourselves and other people, because there's a line in this book that I was, when I was listening to the Audible, I was like, oh, I need to replay that and write that down, and I didn't get to do it. But basically it just says that, we really don't understand anything, and most of what we think we understand is probably opposite of exactly what it is. And so, all of the self-judgment and self-loathing and judgment of other people and all this suffering that we put ourselves through, we're really we just don't need to do that. We put ourselves through a lot of hell that we don't need to experience, just by judging things that we don't even understand. So come back and join the conversation. Everybody have an awesome week, and I love you guys. Thanks for showing up.
Bye. So different being on here with this